In the next part of this podcast with my guest, Paul Nugent, we'll be scratching the surface of the topics covered in the book, Maya Maya. And if I were to be completely honest with you, my viewers, I don't think this podcast is meant for everyone. Even though I personally believe that everyone should be listening to what's been discussed. But in order to appreciate the conversation, it does require the listener to have prior knowledge of cosmic consciousness, or at least the interest in esoteric beliefs. Truth is more profound than science fiction, says Paul. And that pretty much sums up the topics we're going to be talking about in the next 1 hour. If this podcast interests you and you want to find out more, do consider getting the book Maya Maya, which is available on Amazon or through the Aetherius Society website. Links are in the description below. Now, just to give you a teaser of what to expect in this podcast and in this book, just let me read out some of the chapter headlines that's found in Maya Maya. Maldek and the Extraterrestrial Life, Free Will and all that, Lemuria, Atlantis and our modern world, the Cosmic Plan, Initiation of Earth, Operation Blue Water, The Alien, Gotha, Operation Sunbeam, Operation Karma-like, After the Wars, 1970s and the final decades. So if some of these words resonate with you or the topic seems to catch your interest, then I do recommend this book, or at the very least, listen to the rest of this podcast and let me know in the comment section what you think about that, and let's start the conversation going. And now, on to the second part of my conversation with Paul Nugent. Let's go. I really don't feel good.
Beginning of
Is everyone here? What did you find?
You are listening to Supernatural Confessions.
You're right. We're talking about extraterrestrial life as more advanced, more evolved than ourselves. More advanced in a technological sense. That's obvious for anybody who has, studied UFOs or UAPs, as they're now called. How they can do things that just we can't imagine. Aircraft or airborne vessels being able to do. So they're technologically more advanced, far infinite, thousands of years more advanced. But life is not just a technical experience. Fundamentally, it's a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings, and they're just more spiritually advanced. I mentioned earlier on, enlightenment and cosmic consciousness. That's the primary purpose. We're here on Earth, going through reincarnation, to raise a force in the base of the spine called the Kundalini, up through the chakras, the psychic centers, into the Christ center of the crown chakra, so that we can have a full experience of God. It's known in the East as Samadhi. It's enlightenment. It's what the Buddha demonstrated. It's what Jesus demonstrated. We're here to do the same thing. When we're able to do that and bring that state about at will, we're no longer confined to this earth. We evolve to experience on the higher dimensions, as I mentioned, of other planets within our solar system. So that's really what we're talking about in the extraterrestrial sense. And Maldek, you want to touch on Maldek?
Yeah.
I mean, Maldek is huge in the context of everything. We understand Maldek is the name of a planet we destroyed over 18 million years ago. All that remains of Maldek is the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Now, astronomers have sort of, wondered about how that got there, what it once was. Fairly recently, they discovered a giant iron core, which is the basis of a planet. And there's also a chap called Bode, I think he was German, who came up with a series of numbers called Bode's law. When you apply Bode's law, it's what has enabled astronomers to discover the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, because the planets follow an exact numerical sequence. There's a gap between Mars and Jupiter, where the asteroid belt is, where you would expect to have found a planet. Now, our understanding in the metaphysical sense is that was a planet we destroyed over 18 million years ago. And yet, everything being a part of a divine oneness, if you like, we couldn't just be taken out of creation. We needed somewhere, I mean, it was not a good karmic move. It was a very bad karmic move that set us back. We were involved, but we needed somewhere, nonetheless, within this solar system to continue this evolutionary journey, albeit, as I say, under tremendous limitation. And over millions of years, we evolved into a civilization of Lemuria, where we became intelligent beings, more technologically advanced than we are now. We destroyed Lemuria, the civilization of Lemuria. Again, through this whole process of reincarnation over hundreds of thousands of years, if not even millions of years, we evolved into the civilization of Atlantis. Again, technologically advanced, spiritually rather backward. We destroyed that civilization. I mean, it's pretty well documented, both in the Bible, certainly in Eastern texts, in Greek mythology. Plato, of course, refers to Atlantis. And that's what we've emerged into again. And it was in the 1950s late 40s. Actually, the term flying saucer was coined in 1947 by an American aviator who saw nine discs on the horizon that looked like upturned saucers. So he came up with flying saucers. Because once again, we'd split the atom and used it in, obviously, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We then went on to the Cold War, developing the hydrogen bomb. This is where we've been before as a planetary species. Lemuria, Atlantis, before that, Malek. So that's another reason why things are speeding up before coming to a head.
Aren't we doomed to just be killing ourselves over and over again? There seems to be a pattern like that. And I mean, if you watch the movie Matrix, there have been many variations of the world that just always end up the same. So I'm just holding back the inevitable then.
Yeah, because as you said earlier on, I mean, it's difficult for people to, it takes courage to go to become still, listen to that voice of God, feel one's own intuition, one's own intelligence. It's difficult, or can be difficult, to do that. It's not something that is commonly practiced by the human race. If we did, we'd be a very different world. Yes, there are a small number of people who use meditative practices and whatever else to get in touch with that voice. But it's not widely practiced. And so you're right. We keep repeating the same mistakes.
It was suggested by a few philosophers that Earth is a battleground. And we as humans, our souls, choose to be born here or created here within this mortal shell. And then we have certain amnesia, and we're going to go through this game almost from start to finish, over and over again. The reincarnations, like the reset and respawn process. And with this sentient beings or extraterrestrial beings in the other planets, or if you use the Eastern term, the different planes of existence. And if we look at how the I Ching or the Taoists believe in balance, the yin and the yang. For every good, there's going to be a bad. So for every one of us that's trying to bring the souls out to an evolved state, I would make the assumption that there would be another set of force that is trying to get the world destroyed, trying to ruin the souls and bring them down to the other side. Is that the Aetherius Society? What's the Aetherius Society's view on that?
Yeah. Well, we certainly sort of recognize, the yin and the yang and karma. It's very interesting, you're referencing there, seeing the earth as a battleground between good and evil. We would agree with that. And before I go into it, that having been said, there is no evil as such. put evil in inverted commas, but no negative karma on the other planets in our solar system. They've transmuted that. Now, here on Earth, we have not transmuted it. We are, you see, everything is energy.
Yep.
And the greed, the lies, the corruption, the wars, the bloodshed, the murder, the crime, the drug pushing, etc., that we have, that's very prevalent on this Earth, unfortunately, this time, creates an energy. An energy has a frequency. And that frequency of energy goes into creates what we call lower astral realms. They're not all higher. There are higher astral realms, but there are also lower astral realms. And just as there are advanced intelligences coming from other worlds, even actually on Earth, what we refer to as ascended masters. It's quite a common term, ascended, people who have ascended, individuals who've ascended by attaining cosmic consciousness, who've chosen to remain on this Earth. But there are also extremely advanced intelligences steeped in the black arts. There are, in a way, it's Lord of the Rings in certain ways. Some of that energy has become very involved. And I mean, why do we have, why do we have World War II? Why do we have Hitlers and Napoleons? And one doesn't necessarily want to name these people, but who start, world wars. They're pawns of these extremely advanced intelligences in the lower astral realms. We have lower astral realms on this Earth, and I mean, here we're getting into the sort of thick of metaphysics. You mentioned the occult. I mean, this is the occult in the most extreme sense, really, because it's profoundly true and it's profoundly real. Yes, we have lower astral realms that have corrupted, or we've allowed those forces to corrupt us because we have not been in touch with our intuition and our higher self, because we've been just sort of fairly robotic in our mindset and our behavior. And it allows us to be lulled into a certain state of ignorance. And that's been the pattern, you could say, for centuries, if not for millennia. But that's also has come to a head. Another chapter in the book is the initiation of Earth, because again, in the grand scheme, or following Maldek, you see, Maldek was terribly important, hugely important. It's a goalpost. It's a beginning. It's why I begin part 2 with Maldek. How it all began. We came from Maldek, and but to this Earth over 18 million years ago, which to us is a long time. In cosmic time, it's actually not very long. The Earth has had to withhold herself. The Mother Earth is an intelligence, is an evolving being herself within the solar system. The whole solar system is evolving. The galaxy is evolving. Everything's evolving. And the Earth has had to withhold herself. She suffered through Lemuria. She suffered through Atlantis. She's still withholding herself, but she can only withhold herself in terms of her own evolutionary projection for so long. And that time has been reached. And it's why we're having this pressure. It's why the frequency, the vibration of everything is being quickened, coming back to the Master Aetherius of 1954. The evolution of mankind is now being speeded up. It actually is all to do with the Mother Earth. Her vibrations are quickening because she is coming to the stage where she should have been and would have been had she not withheld herself over 18 million years ago for the sake of humanity. And what that's also meant is that there's needed to be a cleaning out of these lower astral realms, because such a frequency of energy cannot be allowed to withstand on this earth going into the future. And that's a very critical part of this whole bigger picture.
Yeah. Now, one would think that after Lemuria, after Atlantis, we would have gotten smarter. We would have at least borrowed the wisdom or the technology, the tools from the previous civilization. But there seemed to be a entire disconnect between one civilization to another civilization. It's like a reset and a different game even. Wouldn't it be better for Earth and all of us if there was some connectivity and growth in that wisdom?
Well, that's why part 2, Eugene, is called free will and all that. Because in the grand scheme of everything, there is an allowance for free will. And this choice of awakening ourselves is literally a choice. It's not something that can be forced upon us. Force is contrary to the will of God. It's contrary to divine will. It's necessary for us to use our free will to make that choice, to reorientate our own lives. We can't influence the life of anyone else other than ourselves. And we just have not done that collectively. We need wisdom. We need wisdom. Wisdom has always been available. What we need, if you like, is we need the urge, the inner soul urge, a pressure, if you like, where we just can't take it anymore, and we begin to change ourselves.
It's got to be that hunger and desire that comes up because something happened in our life that fuck it up so bad that we start looking in other directions. If we are comfortable in a 9-to-5 job, coming home, we're nice, won't be a fat paycheck, but enough to pay the bills and the mortgage. We come back to our Netflix and our IGs and our TikTok. We're not going to want to evolve. There is no impetus to move.
Very true.
But it's only after we go through some form of calamity, the shock and awe of it, and then we start looking for answers, and we start looking for messages. And I think that comes to the part where this book is about the message. And I think that's a very important part of this book, that we want to distill and give to the audience now listening in. What's this message?
Well, I agree with you totally there, Eugene. I mean, it tends to be some kind of calamity or disaster in our own life that forces us to change. You're right. I mean, one of the, in coming back to the 12 blessings, I think it's in the 4th blessing by Jesus. The 12 blessings is like a cosmic extension to his Sermon on the Mount. And the 4th blessing, which is a blessing to the planetary ones, such as the Buddhas, Jesus, the Sri Krishnas who come to this earth. And it says, no initiate became an initiate because he liked comfort. And that is so, and has always been so. Comfort does not help. Comfort actually is not our friend. But I don't think it doesn't have to be a disaster or an unfortunate situation that turns us around. Yes, it certainly can be that. But I think that there's definitely another way. I would even say a greater way, if not that the comparisons need to be made. But I think the more when it's an instinct, because my life was comfortable. I had quite a good job. All my needs were taken care of. I had the paycheck to enjoy myself, and I had a loving family. I had all that I needed. But my instinct was a care for the sadness and the tragedy of the world as a whole. It was something out. It wasn't my life that was screwed up. It was the world. And it was a care. It was an instinctive, intuitive care, a desire to seek answers and to do something about it. I can't compare myself for a moment to the Lord Buddha, but it was exactly the same for him. He was a prince. He was and he, he wasn't allowed to look beyond the wall or whatever. And one day he did look beyond the wall and he saw suffering. And it was seeing suffering that, led him to want to change his whole life and help relieve that suffering. So it doesn't just have to be pain in our own lives. It's from experiencing it. It's having an empathy, and a love and a care for the world as a whole.
That is so lacking in this new generation. Empathy.
Well, I feel sorry for this new generation because they've been given a very poor hand.
Yeah.
They're almost like cannon fodder to the materialistic prison we've created, and they just have to sort of go along with it in order to survive. Anyway, yeah.
There's a lot of me, myself, and I, self-preservation. What is it in for me? I read an article this morning prior to our meeting where new generation of children are cutting off their parents, saying we don't need them. What are they doing for us? How are they serving us? And some even say, I didn't choose to be born. And when I read things like that and hear things like that, it seems to be a huge disconnect towards that consciousness and higher evolution mindset, and the compassion and empathy for people is so siloed with the individual. How are they even going to see the wider wisdom if everything is so minute and microscopic to them? I mean, that's a different topic for a different day, and I'm not sure if this message that we have would even reach out to them, because first of all, anything that doesn't go in line with their belief system, I'm pretty sure they're just going to cut it out. Yeah. Let's get to George King for a bit. Dr. George King, who was the pillar behind this entire movement, and the messages that he got and how you got involved carrying on this work for Dr. George King. What is this message? And maybe give us. We have not talked about Dr. George King. I mean, he is the iconic, pivotal character for the Aetherius Society. Please give us some insight into him.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're right. I mean, he is the founder of the Aetherius Society. He's pivotal to all of it. He was born in England in 1919. 20 years later, along came the Second World War. So he was, of prime fighting age. However, he intuitively knew that there's a greater law: thou shalt not kill. However bad the situation is, it doesn't mean to say you kill for it. And yet at the same time, he could recognize that Nazism was a force for evil in Europe, certainly at that time. So he chose to serve, and he joined the fire service in London, which then went through what's known as the Blitz, the bombing of civilians in London. And there he was, literally rescuing elderly people, babies even, from crumbling buildings that had been hit by these bombs who were on fire. And in night after night, the madness of that, the insanity of that. And going through that experience, he wanted to understand humanity. And so he began to practice various forms of yoga, which was unusual in England, certainly in the 40s and 50s. And he was practicing mainly pranayama, which is yoga breathing exercises, and mantra yoga for up to 8 hours a day over a 10-year period. So he was very, very intense. The consequence of that was, I mentioned earlier on, this force called the Kundalini, in the base that we all have in the base of the spine, rose up through a channel in the spine called the Sushumna channel, opening the chakras, the psychic centers, and he was able to go into the deepest states of meditation. And then, as I mentioned earlier on, one Saturday morning in 1954, he heard a voice which said, "Prepare yourself. You are to become the voice of interplanetary parliament." And all he knew with his yogic training was that this was no apparition. This was profoundly real, what he'd heard. He also knew that he'd been preparing himself for some kind of a role, if you like. And he didn't understand what it meant. Prepare yourself, you are to become the voice of interplanetary parliament. No one could give him any answers. So a week later, he went back into meditation. He said, I'm not leaving. He locked the door. I'm not leaving my apartment without understanding what that communication had been. And an Indian yogi who he recognized walked through the locked door, sort of manifested, explained to him what that contact had been, and gave him various yogic exercises he needed to adopt in order to gain rapport with, as they say, intelligences from the higher dimensions of other worlds. This he did. In all, he would go into what we call a positive yogic somatic trance. Did this over 600 times. He demonstrated it on the BBC television. It was quite a phenomenon over here in the United States in 1960, I believe. And that's how the Aetherius Society began. With these communications, he would be, as I say, in a very elevated state of trance. He did it before public audiences in the United Kingdom and over here in the United States. And coming back to what we were talking about earlier on, the reason that the Aetherius Society is in existence 70 years later is because, these transmissions were profoundly real and profoundly important, of great relevance to the whole human race at this stage in our evolution. And so that was really, I suppose, George King.
Was there I think in one of the chapters we talk about UFOs, did we? Was there ever a visit that came down as a UFO? Because I know in some of the historic texts we talk about angels and gods coming down on a burning chariot. Is there any correlation between UFOs and the burning chariots that's talked about in books?
Well, UFOs for sure. I mean, not necessarily as burning chariots. I know that he had numerous sightings, and people who were with him, also had numerous sightings of extraterrestrial craft. I personally didn't I took care of George King in the latter years of his life, and was there at the time that he died. I didn't personally, at least in his own lifetime, have any experience, but I do know people within the Aetherius Society, some of whom had amazing sightings of craft that came down.
Was George King ever taken into the craft to the different planets, or it was always a visitation?
Yes, no, he did. He would project from his physical body. And yes, he gives accounts of things like that. But you see, Eugene, if it was all about that, he would never. The Aetherius Society would never have been brought into existence. It's not about party tricks. It's not about show. It's about what the messages are about. The existence of these extraterrestrial intelligences, what the message means for every single one of us. It's not, oh wow, he had this experience, or wow, he did this or he did that. As I say, it wasn't party tricks. It's a profound message for the whole human race.
I really appreciate that, because I have an opinion about how content creation is going on the channels these days. Like when you say it's about the content, it's about the message, it's not about the party tricks, I align myself with that entirely. And we also see content creators out there who are really embellishing things, going to the party tricks just to get attention in hopes that the message get across. But most times they're not. The message get distorted because people are so hung up over how does it look inside in the UFO? We're not. Then it becomes an entirely different discussion, and somehow the wisdom and message just disappears. So we're keeping it pure to the message, and I dig that a lot. So, kudos to you guys for surviving 70 years and a lot more, because I think you are keeping it true to the message. And once we keep focused to that, we're on the right track. Yeah. So moving on to the next chapter of this book, what else have you got for it? Because the last few chapters I have not had a chance to read it, because I'm only receiving this book a few days ago. The titles are very enticing. We have Operational Blue Water, The Alien, Gotha, Operational Sunbeam, Carmelite, After the Wars, 1970s, and the Final Decades. Like, lead us to the end of this discussion. Because all these are very cool buzzwords.
You've skipped it. You've done very, very well, Eugene, and I really appreciate your attempt to finish the book. You've missed over one chapter heading.
Okay, which
is pivotal to them all, which is the cosmic plan.
Let's go with that first.
The cosmic plan.
Yeah.
You see, going back to Maldek, and I cannot repeat how important Maldek is in the grand scheme. Just as the other end of that spectrum is critical, which is Laniakea. I talk about Laniakea. I don't know if you've come across Laniakea is a super cluster of galaxies that this whole Milky Way, together with over 100,000 other galaxies in our sector of the universe, are moving towards at phenomenal and accelerating speed. All is a consequence of the Big Bang. It's and all to attain greater and greater states, if you like, of ecstasy, of conscious realization. That's the journey that we're on. We're just in incredibly slow motion down here on our little world, which is what we're part of something vast. We're part of something incredible. And following the destruction of Maldek, as I say, 18 million years ago, but nothing in cosmic time, or next to nothing, the intelligences within the solar system observed that. It slowed everything down in this solar system. It never should have happened. It happened as a consequence of human free will, the myth, if you like, the allegory of the Garden of Eden. We were tempted. We're here to resist temptation, because temptation actually leads us down a cul-de-sac. It seems it's temptation because it's tempting, but we turned away from, if you like, our higher self, and the whole of this solar system has been working towards bringing up humanity back in line. As part of a far greater cosmic plan. We had an accident. The accident needs to be put right so that the journey can continue to make its natural progression, if you like. And I mentioned earlier on how this Earth not only became a habit as somewhere that humanity could inhabit to go through our evolutionary journey, but it slowed her down. It could only slow her down for so long. And in 1964, and this was the central to everything, the Earth, the logos of Earth, was given a tremendous infusion of cosmic energy, a burst of energy that she denied herself, but that she needed so that she could, begin to this or continue this evolutionary journey that she was on until she stopped and held herself back. And that's why everything is now being quickened. It's not, yes, a lot of it is man-made, but it's a far more fundamental cosmic shift, a cosmic release of energies that is quickening everything. As I mentioned earlier on, that has required the cleaning out of the lower astral realms, by certain adepts, avatars who came to this earth, 3 of whom we believe, one of whom was George King. He was an avatar who came to this earth. Primary purpose to go into the lower astral realms, to clean out those forces of evil that have been there literally for thousands, if not millions of years, that we have fed through our own action on this physical plane, and that energy's come back to us to keep us encased in ignorance and warfare and bloodshed and everything else. That vicious cycle needed to be broken, and it was broken by primarily 3 adepts, later 5 adepts, to go into the lower astral realms. That was, if you like, Lord of the Rings. It actually, or Armageddon. It was Armageddon. It's written up in Maya as Operation Carmelite, that took place between October 1967 and February the 24th, 1969. All reported through George King by the Master Aetherius in 24 phases. That was Operation Carmelite, coming back to that chapter in the book. Before that, there was the alien mission. After the initiation of Earth on July the 8th, 1964, this tremendous infusion of energies to the logos of Earth, it disturbed an alien android in the lower astral realms of this Earth. Bizarre and strange and exceptional as that may seem, but it's true. And there were 27 phases of the alien mission, where initially 3 adepts, they were made up to 5. The alien mission came before Operation Carmelite. They were made up to 5 out of necessity to go into these lower astral realms, to evict this alien android. Couldn't be killed, it was unkillable. To evict it from this Earth and from this solar system, eventually evict it from this galaxy. I know it sounds utterly profound. Truth is profound. Truth is profound. It's far more profound than science fiction, actually. Following the alien mission, you got the Gotha mission. You mentioned it. Well, you mentioned it. Yeah, there's a chapter on the Gotha mission, because there was another solar system in our galaxy that was under siege by the same force of aliens as we had been. And various, to cut a very long story short, but the intelligences on Gotha were, if you like, so spiritually advanced in one way that they thought that this alien intelligence had as much right to inhabit their world as they themselves. There were a few individuals on Gotha who didn't agree with that, and they'd seen the action of the adepts on this earth in the alien mission, and they approached the adepts to ask if they would go and help on Gotha to evict the same alien force that was inhabiting or trying to inhabit their own world. The adepts said, it's one thing to protect yourself, but you're leaving other more less advanced civilizations vulnerable to attack also from this alien. I know this is incredibly far-fetched in a way, but again, it was all communicated through Dr. George King on 16 phases in 1966 till early 1967 by the Master Aetherius, describing each of these phases as they took place. The adepts were successful on Gotha. That led to originally two masters from Gotha coming to this earth. This is what's really taking place. And we're so conditioned in the tininess of our understanding, the patheticness, in a way, of the limitations we've imposed upon ourselves. We're part of something vast, not just in our own solar system, our whole galactic system. There's far more going on. It's far more incredible and in a certain way exciting than we can really sort of begin to understand, and yet it's profoundly real. And there is this far greater, if you like, these far greater forces of good and evil that are going on. that was and we've been helped. We are protected by far more evolved beings in our own solar system and the whole galactic system. There are incredibly evolved beings in this galactic system, actually described in the 12 blessings. So, this is the alien, the Gothamish Operation Carmelite. There is that chapter, as I say, after the wars. That's why Dr. George King came. He kept this all utterly hidden during his own lifetime. He never revealed it. But these transmissions are available. They're not available to anybody. They're classified, but they are played within the Aetherius Society. So they're there to be heard. I've heard these transmissions. It's why I'm here in the Aetherius Society. It's why I've written the book. These are profound truths of what humanity's really going through. And, Jesus said, seek and you will find. You've got to want to look. You've got to want to look.
As you were speaking about the messages and the cosmic plan and things, the different war that's going on with the different planets and the transmission that George King got, and you also mentioned that, this sounds very much like science fiction, and I can imagine why. The minute we talk about planetary wars, we use words like alien. Society has been conditioned to think of words of like alien to be something science fiction. You have Independence Day, Encounters of the Third Kind. Immediately upon hearing words like alien and planetary warfare, Star Wars. So the mind shifts into a science fiction territory, and then we go, no, it can't be. But they
all have basis in truth, Eugene. They all have basis in truth.
Yeah, but I'm saying that if I were to put what you just said into a context that I understand from my Eastern lens, is we have forces from divine and infernal, if you may, and between these forces there are angels, deities, devas, ascended masters coming in to save us,
protect us, because we need help. We're like babies.
And we've always heard of demonic possession and affliction and the war between good and evil. If we use those terms, it's almost like, now we understand, spiritually speaking. That works out fine. But the minute we take the same narrative and overlay it with just different terminologies, we can't accept it anymore. So I think that's pretty much where that breakdown in belief is, when readers read this sort of thing and they go like, nah, it can't be science fiction, primarily because of the words that we've been bombarded with growing up watching television. But do you think it could have been one and the same? Like aliens, when we talk about aliens and extraterrestrials, the meaning of the word alien is just not from Earth, which could also mean angels, demons, and whatever that is not from here. Would that be the same in your point of view? Or totally different? Like angels, demons, and devils are not this category.
Well, I think there's both, but there's both. I mean, there are angels and demons, not of this. You see, there's kind of a hierarchy of both. And at some point, there's a crossover where it moves from being terrestrial. We've got wicked people on Earth. Behind them are more wicked people who use the Earth person almost as a pawn. And likewise, there are good people in a very different way, but similar in another way, who allow themselves to be influenced. You see, it's the amount that we allow ourselves to be influenced by a greater intelligence, whether that's coming from a higher source or coming from a lower source. I mentioned the lower astral realms, very active. The influence, the condition, what we're seeing to a very large extent playing out on this physical plane of Earth. Behind those entities are even, potentially anyway, greater entities not of this Earth. And it's the same as it relates in the higher order of things. There are more evolved beings, wonderful, saints, and highly brilliant scientists, whatever, in the right kind of way, artists, composers, etc., who are more evolved, who are influencing us on this physical plane, and behind them, extraterrestrial, are forces also influencing them. So it's like layers of an onion, so to speak. And it all comes down to our own level of consciousness and our own level of reality, as to taking hold of that and allowing ourselves to be open and influenced by higher intelligence. But when I say open, because you see, one has to be discriminating. One has to be discriminating. Is it leading me to have greater love, greater compassion, and to be of greater service? Or and that's what it's all about, bringing love and compassion into the world.
Going back just the topic about getting these messages, and where we ourselves are able to gain that wisdom, but we got to be discerning into the kind of messages that we pick up. And what you just said was, if it's for the greater good, if you're doing this for somebody, for greater purpose and helping people out, then that's a good message to have. So if you go down and you meditate and you get all these other ideas, that if your litmus test doesn't show that it's good for others and just good for you, then that's not a message that you want to receive.
Yeah, exactly.
So then the next question that audience would have here is, how then do I, as an individual sitting down listening to you guys talking for almost probably about 2 hours by the time this podcast ends, get involved? Like, now I'm interested, you got my attention, I want to get involved, I want to be able to receive these messages, and perhaps I might even want to join the Aetherius Society. Where do I go from here?
Well, I guess one would start by going to the Aetherius Society website. There are 2 books in particular that I would recommend. One is the 12 blessings that we talked about, these 12 transmissions given by Jesus we believe given by Jesus in 1958. Incredibly profound, incredibly eye-opening. We also do, as I mentioned, it's a practice. We have prayers. There are online services we do almost every day. I think 6 days out of the week. There's an online service. People joining from many different countries all around the world to invoke the energy from the blessings and send the energy out for the healing and upliftment of the world. The 12 blessings. Another key book is something called the 9 freedoms that were communicated by an intelligence from Mars. Intelligence going by the name of Mars Sector 6, through Dr. King in February and March of 1961. And they outline this evolutionary journey that we're on in the solar system. But it begins with bravery. It begins with listening to that inner voice of conscience that we all have, and which takes us to love, because what's behind it is love. What's behind it is service. That's a path towards enlightenment, but beyond enlightenment, cosmic consciousness, ascension, interplanetary existence, Saturnian existence, solar existence. It's a phenomenal set of teachings given through Dr. George King. I'd love people obviously to get Maya, which can be bought from the Aetherius Society or online via Amazon, because it just gives this broad overview of the whole thing. But yes, I hope it does stimulate people to check out and investigate the Aetherius Society. As Dr. King once said, a diamond is much smaller than a block of sandstone, but far more powerful, far more valuable. The Aetherius Society is a small organization. 12 Blessings is a small book. But you mentioned wisdom. You mentioned wisdom is the voice of God. I'd have to argue, and I would argue before anybody or the whole world, if you want wisdom, if you're looking for wisdom, you will find wisdom in the 12 blessings and the 9 freedoms. You will find wisdom, true wisdom.
All that, it will be in the link below, ladies and gentlemen. You can go click on it, and I will bring you straight to all these topics and articles and the books that we talked about today. Paul, I assume you meditate as well, right? Because I think that's something that Dr.
I
George
spend time in metaphysical practice every day, yes.
Yeah. How did you do that? Like, what's your practice?
Because that's right. I mean, well, I like to do a service of the 12 blessings. Did one this morning. But we also do, as I mentioned, pranayama. Dr. King taught 6 very simple yoga breathing exercises. There's another book I should mention, which is called Realize Your Inner Potential, or King Yoga. And it gives 30 yogic practices. There's also mantra in there, there's visualization exercises, there's prayer techniques, in addition to the breathing exercises. But yoga breathing exercises, the repetition of mantra, various visualization exercises. These are all techniques for sort of gaining higher consciousness. And, I come back to the 12 blessings. I mean, the 12 blessings is an incredibly powerful spiritual practice, not just for sending energy out, but for opening the layers of one's own mind and inspiration. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper, or higher and higher and higher.
How does one utilize the 12 blessings? Do we just listen to it? Do we?
Well, you can get there's a website, 12 blessings. That's 12, not the word. 12blessings.org. Okay. And actually, there's a video there I say of myself now several years ago, demonstrating it. I take people through how they can practice the 12, how we do it, how we use it as a practice.
Okay. Well, before we we end off today, if there's something else that we think we could give to the audience to practice, to take home, something beginner, more like, to do something, like right after they listen to this video, can they do something?
Yes, all right. Yeah. If people close their eyes and sit upright in the chair with the palms downwards on the knees and the fingers spread out, and just take a few moments to become still after all this talk, this conversation that you and I have had, very stimulating conversation, and just allow that to settle down. And become at peace. And then let us visualize coming down from the ethers above, wonderful living white light. See this white light coming down, filling the head and brain. And take it down through the neck and the shoulders, and out into our heart center, which is just in front of the breastbone. And allow your heart center to be filled with this living white light. Now let us think downwards to the holy Logos of the Mother Earth beneath our feet, who sustains us all in space. And there let us visualize an all-transmuting violet flame. And in humility, let us request this violet flame to come up through our feet, and right the way up through and around our body and aura, cleansing us, transmuting all the negativity. And see it flowing up above the top of your head, as high as you can visualize. Just feel this wonderful emanation coming from the Logos of the Mother Earth. White light flowing down. And then, just to end this pass the left hand over the solar plexus, or the right hand, sorry, over the palm of the hand, swipe the palms. But that is how we tend to begin our services, by visualizing those energies, and then we go into prayer or mantra or whatever it may be.
That's pretty much what I do as well, almost on a daily basis. The visualization, the getting the energy up to the Kundalini, and then what the mantra that I've been taught as well. So I think that it's something that's very familiar to us.
There's nothing new about it. There's nothing new about it, Eugene.
I want to find out more. I'm very curious, and as I find out, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be sharing this with you either on my Patreons if you're sign up with me, or highlight videos on YouTube or podcasts. I think it's been an amazing journey with you, Paul, and I don't think this is the end. It's just the beginning. We just scratched the surface, because I think if we wanted to go down deep into different chapters, it's going to be a whole night for us, and a whole bottle of whiskey for me as well. But I'm getting started, and I do encourage and recommend this book, Maya. It's a very, very interesting read. I'm midway, 1/3 way through it, and I can hear your voice. And now that I've spoken to you, the text matches the face and the voice, so I get a 360 experience in my head now as I'm reading this. It's a comfortable read, ladies and gentlemen. It's only 160 pages, but it's pretty decent size. I'm a sucker for paper stock and paper quality. I would say this is a very, very well produced and published book. Paul, it's been an honor to be able to speak with you. I know we were talking before Christmas and trying to find the right time. We had a bit of technical issues coming to this, but I'm so glad we were able to put this together. I'm probably going to listen to this a couple more times and see how we're going to edit this, how we're going to take out the extract certain parts. And I know my community would love to hear about this. So once again, thank you, Paul. If there's anything that I've not asked and you would like to add on to this, now's a good time to throw it in.
No, I thank you, Eugene, and I think you've, I don't know how long we've been talking, probably, as you say, the better part of 2 hours. So it's been a fairly deep dive, talking about some pretty far out concepts. But I do, I'm here in this organization because, as it says in the book, this is a cosmic scripture. It's the greatness of this whole cosmic perspective that is a future for humanity to grow into. And so I just thank you for the opportunity to be able to share some of this.
You're born in UK, but you're living in America now, right?
Correct. I've been here for 34 years in the United States. I've almost all of which was in California. I just moved to Michigan in April this year.
I'm thinking if ever one day I visit London, I would love to visit the original home of the.
Oh, dude, yes, absolutely. It's still in the same building since 1958. Yeah, on the Fulham Road. Oh, please do, Eugene. They would they'll welcome you with warm handshakes and hugs. And hello, Eugene.
Cool. I'll plan for that. So thank you once again, Paul. It's been a pleasure. And have yourself a great weekend and a wonderful new year.
Thank you very much. And to you.
We'll speak again.
Bye-bye.
Hello.
You are listening to Supernatural Confessions.